Welcome back for part 3 of this stream archive. We'll assign an existing biome to this map, make some tweaks, and export this into TaleSpire. If you find yourself a bit lost, check out parts 1 and 2 of the archive. So now, we have this little river shape. This is the default biome that comes with the node, but we don't want that one, so we're going to go into Edit Biomes. And all we have is that simple biome that's set up right here. So, in the toolset, we do have a few biomes. Let's open one of those up. I'm going to launch a new Houdini. We will grab a biome from one of them that comes with the system. Alright, so I'm going to open, file open, and I have my toolset set up as one of these preset directories. And again, if you weren't watching earlier, any directory that you have selected up in here, you can hit this little plus button down here, and it'll add it to this network so you can quickly jump around to different places. So with the tool set, in HIP examples is a few files. There's the example Forest Gully, which is a great one if you're trying to learn the system. Load that up. It has lots of tips and walks you through the whole process. And then there's this Biomes hip.nc. HIP is the Houdini's scene format. NC means non-commercial. Let's load up the biomes. And we're basically just going to copy and paste a biome from this other file. Here we go. And I need to add some more stuff to this. It's pretty basic. I did these a long time ago. I have updated it a few times. So we really only have 2 biomes. There's the Pine Forest, which is the one I've used for my Forest Gully. I've updated it slightly lately. And there is a basic desert biome, which it's super basic, like pitifully basic. Yeah. The desert biome is very unfinished and extremely simple. So yeah, there's notes in these files. So there's these other ones that are called sub-biomes, and that's where you get into snow. And I did if you've seen my Dragons Folly Forest Fire map, I have like a burnt version and a burning version of the forest, and these sub-biomes basically replace the assets in your main biome. And that's how, I don't know if you've seen DePolo's maps where he posts spring, autumn, and winter versions of his maps. He's using these sub-biomes, and he's doing a brilliant job with them. We're going to grab this Pine Forest one. Alright, so we just hit Control-C to copy, and I'm going to plop it down in this network with this simple biome. And so now we have our Pine Forest one. On each biome, there is a default biome button. Right now, simple biome is the default button, or default biome. There can be only one default biome. It does kind of like, so if I click default on Pine Forest, it should unselect this one. Yes, it did. If you're copying one that already has that checked, it doesn't know that you put another one in there. So, but now we have the default biome. I might have to, we'll see, but I think you might have to hit refresh biome because I just plopped this down, but it might work. Let's see. Now if we go back up top, it should use that biome instead of that simple one, and it's taking some time, so it sounds like it's working. There it is. Woo-wee! Alright, so now we have a more complex biome. As you see though, it doesn't know that this is a river, it's just putting trees everywhere. So we don't want that. We can turn on the water plane, enable water. I don't know if enable does anything yet, but you can show the water, and then you can move the water down to where you want it to be. This might be slow, so I might just turn off. Well, let's see. Oops, that's not the right button. Yeah, it's slow. So there's stuff that's recalculating, and it has to re-figure out. Even though I'm not using the water plane for anything, it's going through the system, and it's got to recook everything every time. So when you're moving the water plane, it's probably best to turn off display tiles and display props and go back to the height field, and then you can move it very quickly and figure out where you want your water plane to be. And ooh, it looks like we got some areas that are too low. That's okay. This is an example. Well, maybe that area is a little flooded. We'll just stick it right here for now. This is not ideal. We can clean it up though. So we got our water where we want it. We'll redisplay the tiles and props. We didn't change the terrain at all, so we don't have to recache terrain tiles. In the future you might have to, but at least it knows now where the water is, and we can use that to our advantage in some of the other nodes. So we'll go back into Edit Biomes, and we're going to modify the Pine Forest biome. Tiles we're going to leave alone for right now. We're going to edit props. And, ooh, that's ugly looking. If you hit Shift S, it changes the wiring style. I thought I changed all these to default to this method, which looks a little nicer in my opinion. This is the network that places all of the trees and rocks and all the props, basically. The main input is the height field terrain, and then we basically go through and process how to put things on there. So let's look at the trees. So this is my node that I wrote, the TaleSpire scatter, and this is the one that's putting the trees on the height field, as you can see here. And how it knows where to put that is there's two inputs here, well, three actually. We won't cover the third input right now. The first input is your height field that comes in from the top here, and I don't know why it's not displaying it. There we go. And the second input is the mask that you want to put where you want to put those things that you're scattering, in this case the trees. Let's see what we're doing here. First thing we're doing is masking the slopes. We don't want trees to appear on the slopes, so we've masked out the slopes like we did in the other network. Now we invert that because we want them to not appear on the slopes. This was selecting the slopes. They invert it so that we'll only get trees in the flatter areas. Then we're doing add noise. Why is it replacing? Noise layer, mask layer. Okay, because it's only replacing it in the masked areas. So we're saying using this mask, add noise in the masked areas. Here, this is pretty dense. I don't want my forest to be that dense, so let's play with this noise. Yeah, just because you have a biome node doesn't mean you have to go in here. You still have to go in here and modify them. It's not like an automatic thing. First of all, we'll just play around with the noise itself, offset it, so that we get different patterns. Amplitude's probably fine. I've used this gradient warp down here, which kind of balloons out the noise a little bit, and it makes it more dense. So I'm going to cut that back a little bit so we don't have as dense of trees. And essentially, the darker this red is, the more trees are going to be in that area. But there's other factors that deal with that too. So let's just say I'm happy with this. This looks pretty good. There's some other settings here, but you just have to play around with this stuff. And these nodes are documented, so I need to add documentation to my nodes in the software. But most of the Houdini nodes, you hit this little question mark up here. Make sure my face wasn't in the way. And it should pop up help. So you can get documentation for every node, see what all these settings do. It's deep. Alright, so I like this noise better. What's this one doing? This is scaling the noise a little bit. There's other ways to scale. We're basically scaling it up and adding to it, subtracting rather. So it's like we're kind of subtracting the noise, and I'm probably clamping somewhere. No, I'm not clamping. Okay. Blurring it out so it's not so noisy. I don't even know if that's necessary. And then that goes into that second input of the tree scatter. So at least now we have less trees. The scatter node has got a lot of options. But one of the things we want to do is we didn't want the trees to go in the water, and we do have a simple remove above or remove below water button on here. So if I click that, it's going to just remove everything that's under the water. This is just a simple way to do that. There's other ways to do it. You could have the water be its own biome, and then whatever gets put in there is like a totally separate biome. But this is like the simple way if you just want like, yeah, I don't need multiple biomes, I just don't want this stuff to spawn underwater. So you just click that button. Easy, easy. In here you set the density of how many things you want to be scattered. It's limited also by this radius. This is how far they try to keep away from each other. So yeah, we can change that radius and they get closer or further away, essentially. But the problem is the higher this outer radius is, the more uniform it's going to be. So it doesn't, it doesn't have that organic feel to it. So I try to keep it as low as possible, and then start cranking the density up and down to where it feels right. Yeah, something around there, maybe a little bit less. Oh, one's where I had it before. So yeah, I'm liking that. There's not a lot of trees. Maybe we'll put it a little higher. Okay. So that's tree scattering. So now we're going to go on to the other things that we don't want to put in the river. Like the cliff debris is probably fine. Here's cliff scattering. It's putting cliffs on all the high sloped areas, essentially. Dirt debris. So dirt debris, we could probably keep that in the rivers. That's fine. And then large debris. So this is like these logs and stuff. And while they probably look okay in the river, let's just leave it. We'll be fine. Ground scatter. Oh, ground scatter. Is that one going in there? Remove below water? Yeah, there we go. We don't want the ground stuff in there, so that's good. Alright. So now we've basically got our map. And we'll go all the way back up to the top, hitting U until we get up to this top view. And there's our map. It's pretty simple. So let's export this map. We're going to do display current slab bounds. We probably don't have to have a big slab size, so this is where you adjust your slab size. Let's try 50 to start with. And then it gets slab index range. It'll show you how many slabs. So this is only be 9 slabs, which that's easy enough to paste by hand. But why paste by hand when you don't have to? Since we're using the multi-paste, we don't have to use these registration marks. We'll turn those off. And then we hit multi-copy slabs. Hit the button. If any of the slabs are too big, it'll pop up an error. Right there it wasn't. I'm guessing that's about as big as we can get. Let's see, 4 slabs. I'm guessing this is going to give us an error. Yep, there it goes. Slab exceeds 30k, so yeah, we'll just go back down to 50. And multi-copy slabs. So it's copied everything we need. Start a new map. I always kind of go up a little bit because it's fun to watch. Set the atmosphere down, apply that, and then we hit Control S for the pasting of the multi-slab. So Control S, bam, and there's the map we just created. And I didn't do a different material on the bottom, and like I would probably do a lot more to this, but set our water up, and that's similar to how I've been doing those other forest maps. Like, yeah, this needs a lot of work, but that's the basics. I spent a lot of time on the maps, and yeah, these cliffs are pretty high. So here's an issue. Like, look at all these big, huge tiles there. Let's say you do want this to be kind of a ravine river, but we're seeing way too many tiles here. Let's look at how to fix that. So you go back into Houdini, and that's going to be the cliff scattering. So let's look at that area in Houdini. That's it, we're here. Sure enough, there's not enough cliffs. So we'll just go back into Edit Biomes, then on the forest, Edit Props, and we can find the node that does the cliff scattering right here. Now cliffs use a special way to scatter. Stick by tiles is off, because normally you want your trees and stuff to stick on the tile so that they're not floating above it, they're not sunk below it. So that's turned off for cliffs. And we use a button called Use Cliff Behavior. And that tries to, because the cliffs are oblonged, and as they rotate, it basically shoves them back inside the terrain, so it tries to maintain that curvature of the terrain. That's basically what that is. Okay, so we probably just need to increase the... Oh, this is set by coverage. This should be set to density, I think. That makes more sense for cliffs. And then we're going to crank that density up to something like 20. Sounds good. And then maybe adjust the fall off, or the outer radius. So it's a lot of cliffs, but it's not really that much. Let's crank the density up to 50 and see what happens. It doesn't really help. Yeah, we'll just lower this back down to like 0.8 for the radius. There's still a few gaps there. You know, these are all proxies that I made by hand, so they don't match the rocks exactly. Let's go to 0.7. There's still a few holes there, but let's just go with that and see what happens. That's looking good. You could do a different cliff scatter for just the really high sloped areas than for like lower slope areas. But that looks pretty good. And if you middle click hold down, you can see how many it's scattering. It's only like 1700. It's not too bad. So yeah, let's try that, see how it looks. And that's a great thing about this system, is you can just play around and keep exporting, multi-copy. Oh, we've exceeded our limit. It says we've added more stuff. So let's drop this down. And this is the max slab size. It's not the actual slab size. So sometimes, like if you were trying to do like 45 instead. Oh, it did actually get smaller there. Yeah, this might work actually. So that's probably less than 45. Alright, anyway. Multi-copy, as long as that doesn't pop up, we're good. Yep, alright. And now the neat thing too is, since this was only 9 slabs, you can actually undo it. So if you go into build mode, you can just undo every slab and then do the next one. Bam. So now we have more rocks there, and we could continue to refine that. You can also just go in and modify this by hand if you don't like those tiles. Just be like, okay, let's just... I do that sometimes. Go in and just clean things up a little bit here and there. But yeah, so that's that. I think we should move on. Yeah, that was basically making a map with an existing biome. That's it for this map. Tune back in for part 4, where we'll build off the existing desert biome and make some sand dunes. If you want to support this project, please look me up on Patreon. And until then, see you next time.